One of the most violent escape attempts and one of the most significant events in the prison's history began on May 2nd, 1946. The Battle of Alcatraz started with an escape plan coordinated by Bernard Coy with the help of five accomplices: Joseph Kretzer, Marion Thompson, Sam Shockley, Marvin Hubbard, and Clarence Carnes. If you'll remember, Kretzer and Shockley were part of failed escape attempt number 5, and neither of these men would get a third attempt. So Coy's plan involved breaking into the West Gun Gallery, overpowering the guard, taking his keys, releasing these accomplices from their cells, and exiting the cell house into the rec yard. So look, the gun gallery on the cell block, this little dotted line marks the gun gallery. The door to the rec yard is not really visible in this photo, but right underneath this area here is the door to the rec yard. It leads out down a staircase into the rec yard. Over here on the side, there's a door. This is kind of where it gets questionable. I'm going to call it questionable just because I've never seen any kind of report. I've never come across any information about the plan for getting out of the rec yard. But they never got that far. So if we look over here, there's a door that leads to this staircase. The staircase leads down to the New Industries building. If we come to our model here, and we'll come back to our diagram, that door would be right here, and then this would be the yard part. If we come to the model, you can see the door in the rec yard, and the staircase would come down. So then they'd be in this general area. So I'm not sure if the rec yard door would have been open to allow workers to come in and out. I'm not sure if the key to the rec yard door, which would be right at the top of these stairs outside of the cell block in that Times Square area, I'm not sure if the same key opened that door and this door over here. That's where kind of we don't have this information, or at least I've never seen anything. So not sure how that was gonna come about, but either way, they didn't make it that far. So the plan, he did a lot of planning. One of the things that he did is it's reported that he limited his food intake so that he would drop some weight and he would be thin enough to slip through the bars in this gallery, right? So what he found, what he thought to be a weak spot, he engineered this bar spreader by fashioning a piece of pipe together with a nut and bolt, and he tied that around his neck, and he was able to, with the help of a distraction of the gallery guard, he was able to climb up the cage, utilize that bar spreader, spread it just far enough, just get enough slip through. So what the distraction they use, you can see this door in the gun gallery over here in D block, which is past this doorway on this side. And as we look at the cell house diagram, you can see there's a solid wall surrounding D block. So this gun gallery door would separate D from the main cell house. So we have a distraction over here. Guard comes to this side. Kretzer's climbing up on this side, and then as he's in this main cell house part of the gun gallery, he crouches down so as the guard comes back through, he can't see him through this window. And when the guard steps in back into the main cell house, Coy was able to overpower him, disarm him, and take his keys. Now, the key is important. This little device here was designed for guards on the cell house floor to put their keys or make their keys more secure by giving them to the gallery guard. So the plan was to take this guard's keys, because he would have a key to this outside door. Officer William Miller inadvertently foiled the escape attempt before it even started, because against prison regulations, instead of passing up the rec yard key to the officer in the gun gallery, he held on to it so that he wouldn't have to disturb the officer to let out the kitchen staff. So in Coy's attempt to get the key, when he confiscated them from the gallery guard, the expectation was that he would have a rec yard key. He would come down and let out his accomplices, and they would continue their escape. The gallery guard didn't have the key. Miller still had the key, and he was ultimately able to hide the key in a cell later after he had been taken hostage. And some reports say that the inmates eventually found the key, but that the door had been jammed from their previous attempts to open the door with the wrong keys that the gun gallery guard did have. Other reports don't mention the fact that they ever found a key, so we'll just leave that for what it's worth. But at this point, they can't get out of the cell house, but the inmates are fully armed, and they're able to capture a total of 9 guards who have come in inadvertently, unarmed, onto the cell house floor for different purposes, returning from different areas of the prison and walking into an escape attempt. So they capture these 9 guards, they lock them in cells, but pretty soon they realize that they don't have anywhere to go. Better option than to surrender. Coy fires his rifle through the windows to the outside watchtower. He injures at least one officer. Kretzer, fine gentleman here, eventually fired at the officers that were held hostage in the cells. He wounded 5 of them. 3 of them were seriously wounded, including Officer Miller, who would die from his wounds. But because of the seriousness of the incident, the amount of time that had gone on, we've got a hostage taking situation, we have a standoff. The United States Marines became involved and would assist prison officers in taking back the cell house. Carnes, Shockley, and Thompson would eventually return to their cells, giving up, going back to their cell. Maybe they're thinking about, like, how can we explain our... They return to their cells, but the main 2, Coy, Kretzer, and then along with Marvin Hubbard, they're going for it. They're just going to take their chances. They're not giving up. So around 6 p.m. on that first date, the inmates fired on armed officers attempting to enter the gun cages. One officer, Harold Stites, was killed, so that's 2 officers that they've killed. And around 8 p.m., officers opened a barrage from machine guns, mortars, grenades on the prisoners within D Block, where they thought an armed inmate was hiding. However, they ceased their attack when they realized the escapees were confined to the main cell house. So they have this barrage on D Block, which later, or in the Robert Stroud video, he talked about the bullets flying in through those windows, and some of them being concentrated around his cell, as if they were trying to take him out, even though he's not involved in this escape attempt. So that's the attack on D Block. They realize the inmates are in the main cell house, and eventually Marines are going to drill holes in the roof. These are tactics they've used in the Pacific War. They're going to drop grenades systematically into areas they believe the inmates were hiding to force them into a utility corridor, which would hopefully corner them and give them a nice confined space where these inmates would be located with no alternate escape route. At noon on May 3rd, The convicts phone the warden. They're trying to discuss a deal. The warden will only accept their surrender. Later in the day, the inmates fired at an officer who was checking out the C block utility corridor. And then that night, a constant fusillade was fired into the cell block. The following morning, officers would sporadically rush into the cell block, fire into the utility corridor until just before 10 a.m. on May 4th, when they entered the corridor and found the bodies of Hubbard, who sometimes is reported to be the last to die, the body of Kretzer, and the body of Coy, which ultimately ending the the Battle of Alcatraz. For their roles in the siege and the attack, the escape, Sam Shockley and Marion Thompson would each be given a death sentence, and they were actually executed sitting side by side in the gas chamber in California's San Quentin State Prison. And Clarence Carnes, who I think some reports he was the youngest inmate sentenced to Alcatraz. He would be given an additional life sentence for his participation.